and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Beijing is set to host SCO Summit military parade this week. World leaders including Russia and India are scheduled to attend the high-stakes meet where influence and alliances will be showcased. Kremlin confirms a high-level meeting has been scheduled with Iran on the sidelines of the SCO Summit. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to meet Iranian President Pezeshkian to discuss the situation surrounding Tehran's nuclear program. US President Donald Trump has vowed to take his legal battle over tariffs to the Supreme Court after an appeals court ruled that most of the duties he imposed on imports were illegal. President Trump has slammed the decision as incorrect on his Truth Social platform, declaring that the United States of America will win in the end. President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz have vowed to step up pressure on Russia, warning of new sanctions if President Vladimir Putin fails to meet Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky for talks, and have announced additional air defense support for Ukraine after a Russian strike on Kyiv killed 25 people yesterday. The White House has said that President Donald Trump is still pushing for a Putin-Zelensky peace summit, despite French President Emmanuel Macron warning that Trump risks being played by the Russian leader. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller has dismissed Macron's comments as absurd, insisting Trump is working steadfastly. Guinea's military junta has suspended political parties and barred local media from giving them a voice ahead of September 21st constitutional referendum, which is officially meant to pave the way for a civilian rule, despite earlier promises that junta leader General Mamadi Doumbouya will be ineligible. Officials and supporters are now urging him to run. 3 people were killed and 5 injured after protests set fire to a regional parliament building in Makassar in Indonesia, marking the first major test for President Prabowo Subianto's government. The unrest sparked by lawmakers' pay and the death of motorbike driver hit by a police vehicle has spread from Jakarta to now across the country. The United Nations Security Council have begun talks on a draft resolution to expand the international force in Haiti as armed gangs tighten control over Port au Prince, displacing 1.3 million people and driving famine-level hunger. The US and Panama are pushing to remodel the operation based on voluntary contributions. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, currently in Japan, is expected to arrive in Tianjin, China on Sunday for the 2025 SCO Summit, following Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi's recent visit to India. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has begun a 6-day visit to China, where he will attend the SCO Summit in Tianjin. During his stay, Sharif will meet Chinese President Xi Jinping and other Chinese leaders to deepen what Islamabad calls its all-weather strategic cooperative partnership. He will also attend the World War II Victory Anniversary Parade in Beijing, a grand military parade, and the Pakistan-China B2B Investment Conference. Earlier, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko and Egyptian Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, along with UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, have already reached China. But the spotlight remains on Prime Minister Modi's expected meeting with Xi Jinping, their first in-person talks in China since the 2020 border clash. The 2025 SCO Summit is the largest in its history, bringing together over 20 leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Russian President Vladimir Putin, and many other world leaders. The summit marks the SCO's 25th anniversary, with leaders tackling security, energy, digital threats, and regional conflicts as the bloc seeks to stand as a counterweight to Western alliances. Now for this discussion, we are joined by NewsX World. NewsX World is currently on the ground with Senior Executive Editor Megha Sharma, currently in Tianjin, China. Let's listen into what she has said.
I'm in Tianjin in China at the venue of the SCO Summit, the two-day summit that commences tomorrow and will go on till September 1st. Yes, it is a 10-member grouping where member countries from Russia, India, Pakistan, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, they all are going to be present. The heads of states of all these countries are going to be descending on Tianjin in just a few hours' time. In fact, a very important focus is going to be, of course, of China, India and Russia, the heads of states who will be congregating after a period of some time, because the last time around these three leaders congregated was at the BRICS summit that had taken place in Kazan, and this was a couple of years ago, and now we see that these three leaders are going to be arriving over here and meeting. So it is a strong posturing, a strong message that goes out to the rest of the world, goes out to Europe, goes out to United States of America. The entire world has been hit hard by the US tariffs that have been imposed. India more so, with the 50% tariffs that it is fighting, and it has found help by way of China also coming out in support of India. Russia has come out in support of India, saying that there is now a need for global South to come together. It is now need for Russia, India and China to hold hands and build a multilateral world where there is going to be lesser and lesser reliance on the dollar, lesser and lesser reliance on the US markets. This had also been the message that had been sent out by the BRICS nations. De-dollarization, remember, had been the #1 point that had been raised. Whether it is going to become a reality in the coming months and years, especially in wake of these unjustified tariffs that have been levied against a number of countries, well, it looks like there is momentum that is building in that direction, whether it is about South Korea or Japan, China, Russia, Iran. They all are bearing the brunt of the tariffs. In fact, when you talk about the Latin American countries, Brazil has been facing an equal percentage of tariffs of 50%, which it is finding it difficult to figure out of this situation. Now, amidst all these global developments that are happening, it becomes all the more natural for these countries, for the countries of global South, which include the countries of the SCO, to be part of this momentum, this movement that will allow for alternative markets, alternative supply chains to be built. Let's take a look at point number 2, the very reason why the SCO congregates every year. The pillars on which the SCO Summit is founded on are the aspects of fighting terrorism, separatism and extremism. Well, there was a few months ago a terror attack that took place in Pahalgam in Kashmir in India, and India has been vehemently propagating the cause of fighting global terrorism, fighting cross-border terrorism, and that is going to be the #1 focus point of the joint declaration that is going to be signed by the heads of the states later after the end of this two-day summit. And India will most decidedly continue to keep the push to ensure that the perpetrators of terrorism are brought to justice, and they are given the punishment that is suited for the crime that they commit. And thirdly, if we talk about what is going to happen on the sidelines, three biggest important countries, which is India and Russia and China, all the leaders of these three countries are going to be holding bilaterals with each other. China is going to be holding a bilateral with India, Russia is going to be holding a bilateral with China, and India and China are going to be holding a bilateral with each other as well. Will there be an RIC, which is Russia, India, China, trilateral? Well, not on a formal level, but even if these three leaders come together, sit down around a table, or have an informal laugh, an informal set aside chat with each other, that is going to also be something that is going to be interesting to watch out for, because India, since the Galwan standoff, has been reticent to have the Russia, India, China trilateral, but things already are changing. The tide is already turning. India is open to trade with China. India is open to expanding its markets with China, get in Chinese investment, and of course a desire to also bring in more technology, transfer of technology to take place from China. So a trilateral, maybe foundations of a likely possible trilateral taking place between the heads of states of all these three countries could be sown over here as the three leaders meet. So it is going to be an opportune time. I'll keep you posted on all the latest updates that come in from here in Tianjin at the SCO Summit. Stay tuned with me on NewsX World.
Thank you very much, Megha Sharma, for sharing that insight all the way from Tianjin. Now we are joined by Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev. He's a former Indian ambassador, joins us live from New Delhi for this discussion. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, given this heightened anticipation around the Modi-Xi meeting, what are the realistic expectations for India-China relations post-2020 border tensions?
That's $1 million question, and many in India and China would be waiting with the bated breath for a reply to that event to take place perhaps on 1st September morning. From the Indian side, there would be expectations, and I don't rule out Chinese their own wish list from this meeting. The Indian side would like, first of all, to have stability, peace, and tranquility on the border. They would also like China to stop or at least attenuate the help they are giving to Pakistan in defense matters. As you know, 81% of Pakistani procurements of defense hardware comes from China, and it's meant to be used against India. Thirdly, we would like to redress the trade balance between the two countries, which is the largest India has with any country, close to $100 billion a year, with China buying very little from India. Then again, there would be other expectations, but the list can be pretty long. From the Chinese side, I imagine they would be looking for greater market access, greater access to their investments, which was curbed after Galwan attack. And they would like to make up for the lost market in the United States due to Mr. Trump's wolf warrior economic diplomacy, to make it up in India, which is a billion plus middle class market. And they would also like to seek our endorsement for RIC against United States, to which India may have its own reservations. We are not known to sort of take extreme positions, and RIC or even SCO final communique India would have a moderating influence uh, by not being too harsh on denunciation of the United States or other Western powers. So all that put together makes up a neat package, and I I hope that the two sides would be working behind the scene right now to ensure that there is balance between expectations of each side, and nobody is seen to have uh, upper hand after the summit. Uh, Optics itself is important because both China and India needs more friends. And by having this summit, the two sides are showing a development of a modus vivendi between them, which can be pretty impressive during the Asian century that we are quarter of the way through. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ambassador, we also know about Nepal in this context. They are joining this summit. So with Prime Minister Oli engaging directly with Chinese leadership during the SCO summit, how does Nepal balance its deepening ties with China while maintaining its partnership or historical partnership with India?
I think Nepal is trying to balance its relations with India and China, but not in a very elegant manner. This is partly because the democracy in Nepal is pretty noisy, and it's easier to take pot shots by politicians on India than to rankle China, which is a monolith. Then again, Nepal can't run away from the facts. Over 90% of its trade is southwards with India. It depends on India on vital inputs, including petrochemicals, petroleum, and other supplies. It also sells plenty of hydropower to India. So all that put together uh, makes Nepal a very close economic partner of India. But at the same time, Nepal wants to sort of showcase its friendship with China to extract greater concessions from India on trumped up border disputes, etc., etc. And that does not go well with within the Indian hierarchy. So Nepal has to show greater finesse in its trapeze performance, balancing between India and China. Now,
Yes.
having said that, easier relations between Beijing and New Delhi can make Nepal's task also easier of balancing the two sides.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on. The Palestinian Authority on Friday called for the United States to reverse its denial of visas to Palestinian officials to attend the UN General Assembly that is to take place in September. The State Department of the United States has begun denying and revoking visas from members of the Palestine Liberation Organization and the Palestinian Authority in advance of the UN General Assembly meeting in September, and said Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, was included in the restrictions. Abbas had been planning to travel to New York to deliver an address to the United Nations General Assembly. Abbas's office has said that the decision is a violation of the UN headquarters agreement. Trump administration has justified its decision, saying that the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Palestinian Authority are not complying with the commitments made, and also accused them of undermining the prospects of peace. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much, Yossi, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what are the potential geopolitical implications, and what do you think were the reason for the U.S. denying visas to Palestinian officials for the upcoming General Assembly?
First of all, it's good to be with you again. And,
Thank you.
I think that the motivation of the Americans to revoke the entry for the people from representing the Palestinian Authority is very clear. The Palestinian Authority, in spite of all its commitments and promises to the American administration, refused to stop paying salaries to terrorists according to a law that they have that looks at the terrorists as, that are incarcerated in Israeli jails for terror attacks, that regards them as the fighting sector of the Palestinian people. The Americans have adopted a law that says that they are not going to allow this to go on. And in spite of all kinds of promises given by the Palestinian Authority, nothing has changed. And this is, especially after October 7th, it's high time that they stop paying salaries to terrorists, because this means that they pay salaries also to the terrorists that committed the terror attack of October 7th. And this is, of course, something that we cannot afford. The Americans cannot afford seeing somebody who's supporting October 7th speaking on the stage of the United Nations. And that's why they revoked their visas. Now, of course, this is a message to all those countries that want to recognize the Palestinian state headed by the Palestinian Authority, that this is unacceptable from the American point of view. And it's a message that is echoing all over the Middle East, I guess, and Europe, because it's a clear statement by the American administration that this is not a time to recognize the Palestinian state, and this is definitely not the people that are supposed to represent the Palestinians, those who support or support financially the people that carried out the 7th of October attack.
Thank you very much, Yossi, for joining us and sharing your insight from Israel. Now we move on. U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to go to the Supreme Court following a ruling by a divided U.S. appeals court that declared most of his administration's tariffs illegal. According to reports, the court has allowed the tariffs to remain in place until October 14th, giving the Trump administration time to file an appeal with the Supreme Court. Moreover, the ruling does not affect tariffs imposed under separate legal authorities, such as Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Trump has responded to the decision on his Truth Social platform, calling the ruling incorrect and emphasizing that all tariffs remain in effect for now. The decision comes as a legal fight over the independence of the Federal Reserve reportedly also seems bound for the Supreme Court. Now for this discussion, we're joined by Jayjit Bhattacharya. He's an economist and finance expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Jayjit, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, how might the Supreme Court's eventual ruling on the legality of Trump administration tariffs impact U.S. trade policy and also international economic relations?
Trump's premise of turning around the U.S. economy as per his vision was to basically use tariffs as an instrument to do the change that he thought is important for the U.S. economy. And therefore, he started using the application of tariffs in a very aggressive manner, and we have seen the repercussion of that. As per the US judiciary, it seems that he did not have the power to do what he did. Now, in another case, which is similar, where the Supreme Court actually acknowledged that the president can run the country using executive orders, that has been upheld, which itself was a bit shocking to those who are observing the US from outside. But on a similar case, which is a tariff case, where again the president had invoked financial emergency to raise the tariffs that he raised, had been shot down in the lower courts and then shot down in the judiciary subsequently also, and it's on its way to the Supreme Court. And it seems that there was a consensus, a significant consensus among the judges. Most of the judges agreed that this was stepping out of line in terms of the power that the president wielded. And hence, this is not something that is acceptable. So it is also predicted that most probably the Supreme Court may also agree to what has been already passed earlier by the lower judiciary. And if that happens, there is obviously a repercussion in both the US and the rest of the world. And the repercussions may be more healing in that sense, because the tariffs had been very, very disruptive and has caused a lot of chaos in the business and in the economy, and has led to job loss both within the US and outside. So if the judgment overturns the president's power to impose the tariffs, then it will lead to a healing effect. And then subsequently, the president has to go to the Congress and the Senate to pass appropriate legislations in order to be able to pass the tariffs that he wants to pass.
And Jayjit, in what ways does this legal challenge to tariffs reflect deeper tensions within US governance now, particularly regarding the independence of institutions?
Again, from the outside, it seems that a multitude of US institutions are getting compromised. We have seen pressure on the Fed, which is a very sacrosanct institution, not just for the US, but for the rest of the world, because the trust in the dollar flows through the trust of the Fed as an institution. And if that's getting eroded because of the intervention of the president's office, then clearly there will be an impact on the trust on dollar. And dollar is important for global trade. Similarly, we are seeing the educational institutions being compromised in terms of their autonomy, for whatever that reason may be. But they seem to be coming under tremendous pressure from the US administration to toe a certain line that the US administration feels is correct for the US. And similarly, we see many other such institutions getting compromised, including the institutions of the Senate and the Congress. And therefore, that leads to a concern that it might lead to the weakening of US as an institutions-driven economy. And therefore, if the US weakens, that's a very troublesome sign to the rest of the world.
Yes. Thank you very much, Jayjit Bhattacharya, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on. As per the White House, US President Donald Trump is still working on a Russia-Ukraine peace summit. They further said that President Trump and his national security team continues to engage with Russian and Ukrainian officials towards a bilateral meeting to stop the violence and end the war. The statement further claimed that the war would have never happened if President Trump was in office. White House says it is not in the national interest to further negotiate these issues publicly. After meeting with President Putin in Alaska earlier this month and hosting Zelensky along with European leaders at the White House last week, President Trump had mentioned setting up a bilateral talk between the Russian and Ukrainian leaders, but Russia has since played down the likelihood of such a meeting. Earlier, French President Macron had claimed Putin might have played Trump. White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, rejecting this, stated the following.
President Trump has achieved 7 peace deals in 7 months. No president in history has done more to advance the cause of peace. He's been nominated by multiple world leaders for the Nobel Peace Prize. And obviously he's working steadfastly to end the killing in Ukraine. And keep in mind, this is President Biden's war. It started because of President Biden, and President Trump inherited President Biden's war, and he's working steadfastly to end the killing. And that's something that everyone in the world should celebrate.
A U.S. guided missile cruiser USS Lake Erie was seen crossing the Panama Canal from the Pacific to the Caribbean after the Trump administration deployed warships near the coast of Venezuela. The Lake Erie had been moored for the past 2 days at the port of Broadman at the canal's Pacific entrance. The United States has said that the deployment of warships to the southern Caribbean near Venezuela's territorial waters was an anti-drug trafficking operation. Earlier, Washington has accused Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro of leading a drug cartel and has doubled the bounty for his capture to $50 million. However, the United States has made no public threat to invade Venezuela. In July 2025, Trump reportedly signed a directive authorizing the use of military force against Latin American cartels designated as terrorist organizations. Venezuela has responded with its own military posturing, deploying warships and drones to patrol the coastline. Maduro also claimed to have mobilized more than 4 million militia members in response to U.S. threats from the United States. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.